So let's talk about the Atlanta Hawks. The Atlanta Hawks are a team which have recently, been good but not great, phenomenal but not awesome. And last year they were probably the most mid team in NBA history. Uh, and I want to talk about them because honestly they're one of the most interesting teams, and they've been one of the most 50-50 franchises ever, right? The Atlanta Hawks are one of the teams which have been blessed with a superstar player. They have Trae Young, which is a player which has carried them to the conference finals and has consistently been one of the best players in the world, basically, just due to his ability to floor raise a team, right? The thing is with the Hawks is that they've had a big problem when it comes to how are you going to run your team around a guard who doesn't play defense. You see, the Warriors figured this out. But what they did was they were like, okay, so we have a superstar player. He doesn't play defense. What we're going to do is that we're just going to put the offensive players around him to complement his style of basketball, right? Like, we're just going to put Draymond in to complement, to play defense. We're going to put Klay Thompson in so he could space the floor, etc. The thing is with this team, with the Hawks, is that they haven't done that. The Hawks are a team which are very expensive, and they've recently been under a lot of fire because last season they did this big trade to make everything work, and in the end, they ended up being mid. Like, they're one of the teams which, when you look at their record, right, they are literally the definition of mid, right? They finished the season 41 wins and 41 losses. They were 500, right? In their conference, they won 26 games and they lost 26 games. At home, they won 24 games and lost 17 games. Away, right, in other stadiums, they won 17 and lost 24, right? When you do the math to that, that ends. No, I'm sorry. In their home, they won 24 and they lost 17. Away, they won 17 and lost 24. And their last 10 games, they had 5 wins and 5 losses. It's like the team was trying to be mid. It's like every statistical category places them in mid, right? Like, they got more wins at home than what they did when they were not home. But you know what happened when they were home? When they were not home? They lost. So in my opinion, the Hawks have been stuck in mediocrity. And the reason why this happens is because they just can't find a system that works. When you have a ball dominant point guard, you want to surround him with pieces so that he can be the highest version of himself, not those so that he has to change his play style around teams. And that's something the Hawks didn't understand. And I know a lot of people are going to be like, oh, but what are you talking about? Like, but when you have a ball dominant point guard, you should give him pieces to help relieve his stress of handling the ball. Yes, that's true, but if you have a point guard which you've accustomed to for years, it's just like you go create the offense. And from one season to the other, you bring in another dude who's going to take touches away from him. There's going to be a learning curve there, which might just change how the point guard plays completely. One thing that they did was that they traded John Collins for salary cap, the Hawks. But I like their starting lineup. The only problem with this team is that it's just like, what are you doing? They have a bunch of players, right? And they have a bunch of different ways that they could take themselves, right? to achieve what they want to achieve, which is a championship with Trae Young. But in my opinion, their starting lineup is trash, right? Like comparatively, they have Trae Young, right? They have Bojan Bogdanovic. You have DeAndre Hunter. You have Onyeka Okongwu and you have Clint Capella. Like I like that lineup, but what is telling me that they're gonna win more than 41 games? Like I'm sorry, but this team is a complete and utter underachievement team, right? Look, I like the Hawks, but they're one of the teams which consistently have just been underachieving and underachieving and underachieving and underachieving. And that is not a slight on the Hawks. That is a slight on how bad these players want to win. Right? These players don't want to win. Clint Capella is there, and I love Clint. I think he's a great player. But as soon as they reduce his touches, it's like he hasn't been motivated to play anymore, right? And they don't feed him the ball enough for it to make sense for him to be trying every single time. With a guy like DeAndre Hunter, it's like you're supposed to grow into a good player. But every single season that passes, they don't give you enough touches for you to develop the correct way. So you're stuck here being a good player who could be better, but he just needs to be a better offensive player and defensive player, and he just doesn't want to work on that. Bojan Bogdanovic is a vet. He's good, but he's relegated to the role of just shooter, right? And that's been his role for forever. And in my opinion, like that really limits and stunts his growth. Like you're only 30 years old, and you could still grow your game like Brook Lopez did, etc. But you decide not to because I think it's because of laziness or at least a lack of motivation. And you have a guy like Onyeka Okongwu, which just he plays so much, he is there, but they don't give him enough time and enough attention. Like Onyeka Okongwu was a bench player this year, and in my opinion, that's horrible. He is one of the players who's probably going to develop into being a good player, and now he just can't get enough minutes for if his life depended on it. Then you have a guy like Sadiq Bey, which even though I like Sadiq Bey, I do believe that he became much worse as soon as he came to Atlanta. Not in terms of percentage or anything, just in terms of that he was averaging 14 points in Detroit, 11 in Atlanta. He is doing it with less shots, and in my opinion, you have to appreciate how he fit into the team. But it just looks like with Atlanta. With the Atlanta Hawks, it looks like they just haven't figured it out yet. Yes, they are a great franchise, but it looks like they haven't figured out enough what to do and how to structure themselves to win more games. In my opinion, what they could do is get a big man and trade DeJounte Murray because that would be something good that would complement Trae Young. But I don't know what to do. Like even me, I look at the Atlanta Hawks and I'm like, do you trade DeJounte? Do you get new pieces? It's like this team just has a problem of it's like, what do you do? And I don't think anyone knows what to do because they don't have enough assets to go get like some big name talent. But they also have enough assets to go get themselves a few players which would change the course of their franchise. So in my opinion, we have to see with the Atlanta Hawks. They're a great team. They just have to figure out how are they going to build around Trae Young. And really, that's my whole question, right? Where it's like, how are you going to build around Trae Young? He's been there. He's been consistent. He plays a lot of games. You love him if you're Atlanta. You hate him if you're not because he's just clutch and stuff like that. But in my opinion, you have to consider that even if Trae Young might be the best player in the world, we do have to look at him and say, yo, like, how are we going to build around you? And I hope the Hawks figure it out. And I hope that they could get out of this.